All right, everyone, we are back. This is Tyler,
Hey, I'm Adam.
and we're interesting stories to tell today. I want to start off by saying, or really just bringing up the topic of a funny story that came up. So anyway, I go to a local hockey game, an event, and I'm get there and had a few to drink, feeling good, walking around. There's plenty of people. It was a night where they sell beers for $2. So yeah, anyway, that's a whole other story. We'll talk about that later. But
Yeah, $2 beers.
yeah,
That's our next one.
you can't go, yeah, $2 beers. You can never go wrong with $2 beers, unless it's Bud Light, which in this case it was. But we get to the game. Adam, you were there, right? I think you were there.
Yeah, was I there?
Yeah, you were there, and it'd been a while since I'd been to a hockey game.
I went to one of those games.
Yeah, and they're fun. I don't know why we had never.
That was when you got the sweater. Was that game?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So thank you keeping me on track. Thanks. So I'd been a while since I'd been to the game, and I check it out, and there's this booth that's selling sweaters for my team there, and my team, but they're selling sweaters, and I asked them how much for the sweater. They say, well, it's $20 for the sweater, but you have to sign up for the local newspaper.
Mm.
And I remember thinking that moment, Jesus, like, newspaper. When was the last time I read a newspaper?
Right.
But the sweater was cool, $20. Can't really beat that. So I signed up. And I started getting notifications from my weekly newspaper in my email. It was, they do the e-newspaper now because it's 2018. But
That's
so
interesting.
I'm sifting through some of these articles just because I'm interested. And I realized at that moment how disinterested I was in reading the. It sounds terrible. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up calling the local newspaper, and I ended up canceling. And I remember they asked me, why are you canceling? And I thought about it for a second, and the phrase that rang in my head that will be our subject for today is the death of the written word.
Mm.
And that's what stood out to me is the newspaper just has not been a part of my fabric of understanding or knowing what's going on in the current day for, God, since maybe I was a kid. So I kind of wanted to tell that just to kind of give an idea of how that sort of came to mind. But I don't know, Adam, what do you think, man? What does that spell for you, or what has your experience led you to in that regard?
Well, yeah, that's interesting you said, because when I came to you with this topic, when we were workshopping this, I was like...
Back in the old studio.
Yeah. I was like, oh, this might be an interesting topic because this site that this website, I don't really go to it too often, but I pop in every once in a while, and I happened to go to it this one day, and they specialize, they review a lot of content, and they do little things like that. It's very, it's a lot of written content,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this big post on the site saying like, oh, we're gonna change it up. We're gonna try to move away from the written content, and we're gonna try to do more video and audio stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's really interesting, and it just made me think like, you always hear people saying that print is dying, but it seems like even reading is kind of dying in a way, because apparently people just want to read less, kind of, and they want to watch and listen to more things.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
that was what brought this topic to mind for me, and yeah, I don't know. It's what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense, because if you really start to really conceptualize it, and we've talked about this in other episodes, how TV and film are kind of owning the industry of entertainment, where, and when I was a kid, I remember waking up in the mornings and on Sundays, as an example, and do you remember the Sunday comic strips that were built into newspapers?
Yeah,
I mean, you're a comic guy more than I am, but
yeah.
That's kind of a staple. I don't know if
Yeah.
it still does that today, because again, I don't really have print media anymore. But
I think they would do it in the daily ones too. The Sunday ones had the big like color strips,
right. And I think a lot of that is that I'd wake up and there was some excitement about that because the internet wasn't as pronounced when I was a
Right.
kid. I
Yeah.
know that dates me. It makes me sound like some old dude or something, but it wasn't as pronounced back then. And nowadays, as an example, you can
Everything is
log.
there.
Yeah, everything is a game and everything is entertainment anywhere, especially with the internet, which we use every second of every day with mobile phones or with
Hmm.
computers or there's just so much technology that takes us by storm. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it it's definitely not what it was, at least when I was a kid, because of the fact that you can gather news information from your Twitter feed, as an example.
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah, and so there's just a lack of necessity to use print media to find, all this stuff about tagging and all that. The fact that you can, how do I explain it? Like for Twitter, you can search a hashtag and you can find a bunch of
Yeah,
information on it,
yeah,
and things go viral really
yeah,
quickly. Whereas news media, newspapers and whatnot, there's a finite sense of what goes into it, and it, before the internet, it was kind of it was restricted as far as how much you could really see there. So that's a bit frustrating from a personal experience as far as not being able to have as much information with just a newspaper versus having the wide
yeah.
breadth of the internet. And this comes at an interesting time too, right? Because isn't net neutrality getting rolled back as well?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Which
avoiding
they're
staying political, but
yeah, and people have mixed opinions on that.
right.
But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, that raises a whole other ballgame. But the internet has just become such a source of so much information that's so readily available that, and relating back to this story of buying the sweater at the hockey game, it's why would I even, why would I continue that? They asked me that question, why would you continue this? And I'm like, well, I don't need it
mm,
because it's available elsewhere for
mhm,
free.
right.
So it makes you wonder what the future of, and you can tie this to books too, to your point,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the concept of reading.
Yeah, I wanted to go into that a
Yeah,
little bit.
and I've been trying to pick up my reading a little bit more as of late. I've read a couple books
Yeah,
lately.
I've been that's the thing I'm trying to do. A little
Yeah,
more.
I just purchased another book actually that's coming to me, but I ordered it on Amazon actually, and there's a local bookstore. I also picked up a book there recently, but I ordered it on Amazon, and one of the things that makes me think of this too is Amazon, as forward thinking and as technologically
Yeah,
advanced as they are opening up bookstores
right.
throughout. I would imagine throughout the United States, but there's one that opened up real close to where I live, and I remember when I heard that it had opened, it made me wonder, why would Amazon open a bookstore?
Yeah.
Like, what reason could there be for that?
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing about. I guess they want because bookstores are kind of dying off. Like
Yeah,
the big chains, like Borders closed down a few years
oh, that was
ago.
days back.
Um,
Crown Books, were they Borders too, or was that a separate independent? That might be regional. I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, there's kind of like there's still Barnes and Noble. There's like little small things still,
Yeah,
but there is kind of a that market is kind of going away in a sense. So I guess because Amazon, I think their thing was originally books. So I think
way back. Oh,
I,
actually,
I
that's
think
it.
when they started, they were essentially like an online book dealer shop thing.
Okay.
So it ties it back into their roots, and they see like I guess an opportunity to uh, uh, introduce themselves into this kind of I guess quote unquote dying
Industry.
industry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I wonder, yeah. With that being said, Barnes and Noble probably is maybe the next bookstore to go. But
maybe.
I don't know if it's 100% dead and gone necessarily from the, if you're looking at it as a holistically as a giant piece. So I feel like there's still a lot of people, and maybe this is a generational thing, that still retain the value of physical books
Yeah,
and print media. I mean, the idea that
I want to talk about that.
yeah, having a bookshelf is something of an aesthetic piece that people still value. And I actually, if we're really looking at books specifically, do you remember when there was that initial shift from where audio, not like audiobooks and digital books became a thing. Meaning you could
Yeah,
read a book on your
kind of.
iPad or on a Kindle
That
or
was
something
that
like
was like
that.
in the past few years, right?
That has really started to amp up, right?
Yeah,
You know, the idea is convenience and having all
yeah,
of your books in a single location, so it frees up space. But the novelty of having books is something that I know a lot of people who are really into literature
right.
or English really value. So
Hmm.
is there still that? It's kind of like record collecting, right? Is there still that subculture of people that will keep that alive? I mean, I guess you could argue there's that with anything,
Yeah.
but
I think there is, and I think there will be. I wonder how it'll affect the printing business. I would assume that like uh, costs are going to go up into the production of books as they get as you know as we keep going into the digital stuff, the tablets and all that, like the ebooks. I think I wonder if, and I think it might happen that these things are going to become more costly to produce, and it'll be because the resources are kind of finite, trees and all that.
right,
Um, it's a kind of a slight environmental issue in a way.
yeah, because
Uh,
of paper consumption and whatnot.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's going to be interesting. But I think people are going to keep it alive. Like I've been trying to read more, and I find that when I read something and it's not on a screen, it's pretty relaxing, and it's kind of nice to do that.
Hmm.
I'll try to read for a good amount of time, and you feel kind of refreshed
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that. I know, without sounding like a pretentious dick, I know that there's one going to a park as an example and laying in the grass on a blanket or even on the grass itself, and depending on where you live, if it's sunny and it's a nice day, sitting back with a physical book is really this opportunity to kind of disengage with just this digital lifestyle that we constantly live. I mean, even if you work a normal day job, you're in front of a screen all day for the most
Right.
part because there's no company out there that is mandating you look at physical documents. Most everything is, there are
Yeah.
exceptions to that rule, I feel, but even if you're a student, most of your work is digital. You're submitting papers online, you're watching video lectures in a hybrid classroom.
Right.
So,
The textbooks are becoming
yeah,
more and more digitized
Mhm.
now, right? Like,
which is also bullshit because, forgive me for being,
because
course,
we used
but
to have
it's
to
also
pay a ton of money to
because
get
you could
those.
you could rent books. You could
Yeah.
rent books from sites
Yeah.
like Chegg or
Right.
Amazon even lets you rent books.
Amazon.
But now there are some courses where, and I feel bad for university students, where you have to buy the fucking digital book
Oh, yeah.
online, and you can't rent. Well, I could be wrong. You might be able to rent those, but don't they generally tend to be more expensive than
I
buying?
actually don't know. I would think that they would be cheaper.
If maybe we're stupid and we don't know, but
Yeah.
are books cheaper? Tell us. Let us know if we're completely wrong. Be a good Snapple fact to
Because I
remember
think,
later.
well, usually I think, well, actually, that's interesting too. When you pay, that's something to be said too. When you pay the same amount of something,
And don't get a physical copy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's like you buy something and it's like $40,
Mhm.
and then and it's physical, but then the digital is also $40. It's like, shouldn't it maybe be cheaper, possibly?
Yeah.
Because there's not, there's no, I don't know.
I don't know why that makes me think of this, but you know how on iPhone you've got those games. There are various, or iPhone or Android mobile devices, I should say in general. There are games that you can download from the App Store, and in order to advance past a certain level, if you're failing or if you want to buy this fucking outfit for some game or something,
You have to put
you,
money
you have to purchase gems or
in-app purchases.
in-app purchases.
That's in video games too now.
Those are so subtle and hidden. So, is there a financial element to all this as well? Are people more likely to spend money on digital books because it's not seen? Like, I wonder what data supports. I guess you could argue that credit card debt is a testament to that. But
Mhm.
are you more likely to spend when a card's on file? You can just hit buy versus going into a
I think so.
physical bookstore or going somewhere else and buying with cash, as an example.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of. I think online shopping, there's a lot of impulse buying.
Actually, you know what reminds me of with Amazon? Wasn't there a news article that came out or news article that came out in
Topic.
around December, around the holidays, saying that, or maybe even post the holidays in January, where Amazon made a ton of money on online purchases compared to retail purchases at physical locations, something to that degree.
I
I want to say that
I
that
think
happened.
so. That it sounds familiar, and it sounds likely
I mean,
because everyone's shopping on Amazon.
and Cyber Monday has really shot off versus, and you know what, the concept of death of the written word, and I do quotes on my hands around that. I feel like
it's a little sensationalist, but it was kind of catchy to me, or like it was, it catches your eye.
like twinkling in my eye. But
Yeah.
it's more than just, oh, print is dying or reading is dying. It's more like, how has the internet evolved to maintain our attention?
Right.
And you could argue too that podcasting, like what we're doing now, just talking over the internet, is an expression of the technological age versus, what was it in that? Where did zines, like the concept of zines?
Oh, the zine.
Yeah, I'm not too well read on that, so
I don't really
if I have much
know.
to say, but that was popular in like music culture and whatnot. I want to say in New York. Again, I could be completely wrong, but
a lot of different things, not just music, like for everything. Like, well, zines actually, those they're still pretty big now, and some of them are digital now.
oh, digital zine.
Yeah.
Is that only in the comic industry, or is that true of music and arts as well?
I remember I've seen some stuff that I can't remember what it was called, but I was following like a musician like a few years ago, like a couple years ago, within the past like maybe 3 years, and
yeah,
I think they were featured in a zine that was like, a total DIY kind of looking thing, but it was well put together, but it was digital, and it had like a bunch of stuff in it. It had like movie reviews. Like I remember there was a movie review for like this 80s slasher movie, and it was talking about like this certain type of music and different kind of things.
Yeah, but
so that they're still going on, and I see artists do them. Like artists will do them for like they'll have like a theme, like some cartoon or something, and it'll be like, there will be a themed zine. It'll just be like fan art of these like cartoon characters or something like that. So there's definitely that is still going on.
Huh. Yeah,
and it's changing too. It's also getting with the times.
And maybe they have to. And take, for example, the initial story that I had started with, which was if they stick to, for example, if the newspaper decides to keep getting some boy making $6 an hour, or boy or girl making $6 an hour, riding their two-wheeler down the street with a bin in front, tossing papers in front of someone's doorstep.
Do they do that? Is that? I don't think that's a thing anymore.
At this point, it's probably machines that... No, I don't know, mail carriers. The point is, we don't know, because it doesn't happen anymore.
Or there's like a truck that...
But if they keep doing that, they're not going to gain... There's no sense... They're not going to continue to even retain subscribers. So they're at a loss if they keep doing it that way. So as far as that's concerned, ultimately, I think time will be the biggest test as far as what happens in the future. I know personally, I would like to continue supporting physical print materials as much as possible within what I will do.
It always seems
books.
worth it.
Yeah.
Getting something like that, and you kind of you see it, you want it.
There's a tangible reward to it as well. Whereas, I've bought ebooks before, and I find that I end up not reading them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's laziness or I'm of a minority there, but it just ends up being a waste.
Yeah, you kind of I can see like it would be easy for digital stuff to kind of put that on the back burner and never return to it. Whereas I think if you have a physical reminder, it might, even if you keep putting it on the back burner, the fact that it's there in front of you and you can pick it up, it'll be like, someday I actually will do this, and one day you will actually look at it, pick it up, open it, and read it.
There's a bookmark there, which is a sense of, there's like if you think about it, there's this overhanging progress bar that exists, and right above it that says you are only this far in, and I think we have a constant desire to complete things. Some
Right.
of us maybe. So yeah, on an iPad as an example, where I feel like a lot of people probably store audiobooks or ebooks. You open it up and you're just flooded with all these apps, all these things that you can be doing, and so it's easy to get distracted by, oh, what's the weather today? And then that side rails into something else, and then you're on YouTube, and then 3 hours later you've watched all these videos that are
Right.
not important and were far from your original intentions. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm just insane and it's just me. But
No, you're saying like you get distracted.
Yeah, I
there's
mean,
too much. Yeah, I mean, no,
just
that happens all the time.
like
It happens with
constant
me all the time.
constant information.
I have so many tabs open on my web browser, like
yeah.
it's
How do you
ridiculous.
even keep up? Yeah, especially I mean even
but
in the
I
work world.
keep them there. Sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, but
I've noticed that with my phone lately too. I've got 20 tabs of which if I were to sit down and have a little therapy session with my tabs, I'd say these are all pointless.
right.
It's
Yeah.
Amazon link. What am I?
Right.
What do I want to buy
Yeah, to
10
get-
years
yeah.
from now or something?
I keep certain things up on my phone that I think, oh, it's good to maybe have that up. I try to keep things that it's like, oh, okay, like I'll have that as like, for kind of safekeeping,
Mhm. Yeah.
But then I'll go through it and it's like, oh, I can close that.
Right. So it's difficult to say. We don't know until it plays the course of
Right.
time. So,
I do think that it is interesting that it does seem like people aren't really reading for leisure anymore, like a lot of people.
Mhm.
And they're just finding other avenues to preoccupy their time, games, movies, TV. Because TV shows are like books in a way, kind of.
Yeah, I mean they're telling a story
Yeah.
in essence.
But it's just visual. And then, it's like, it's kind of like, well, yeah, it's actually funny because, like, that just reminded me, well, it reminds me of Game of Thrones.
Which used to be a book or
there's
is a book.
Yeah, it's an adaptation of a book, but it's so easy to watch it,
Yeah.
It makes me think of anime, Japanese anime. Like a lot of those start out as like comics, and then they get adapted into a cartoon,
Okay.
and then
I didn't
people
know that.
will, and then some of them are made as a cartoon first, and maybe they'll have like a comic adaptation. But like a lot of big ones, they'll start off as comics, and then they're a show, and you can kind of just watch the show, or you can read it. You can do both because the comics will be way ahead usually of where the show is.
Mhm.
But it's just interesting, like, but people will probably tell you to like just watch it, or,
Yeah.
and like just watch Game of Thrones, just watch this cartoon instead of reading the source material. And then it's kind of like, well, if you're into it, maybe you'll go back and read the source material. Same with movies. When movies are adaptations
That's
of
true.
things like the comic book movies
Mhm.
and other things, the movies that are based on books.
Harry Potter
Yeah.
and Hunger Games and all those
Yeah.
kind of viral novels.
And it's so easy to just sit down and watch those because you can get it. You can get a whole story in 2 hours, whereas it might take you like 2 hours to read like a third of the book or something.
Right.
And you don't finish the book in 2 hours,
Yeah.
unless I guess you're freakishly fast at reading.
There are some people that are.
There's a way to do it too. There's like a way to speed read where you kind of like, I've heard that you read only a certain amount on the page and you get the whole story or something. I don't know. That's
Is there a personality or a intelligence quotient
I
that's
don't know.
related to
It's
that?
just something
Okay.
I've come across randomly. I might be making this up actually. It might not even.
You're fucking making it up.
No, I don't. No, I think there's a thing. There's some kind of thing like you don't read. I think it's essentially you don't read the whole page. There's a thing where you read a chunk of it.
You just buy the Spark Notes.
Yeah.
Spark Notes. Didn't that used to be a website?
Well, those were books.
They had Spark Notes books.
You bought those.
You
as
could
a
buy
supplement.
Macbeth.
Yeah, all the
And it said-
Shakespeare stuff was
Pass
Spark
your essay about Macbeth in your English class.
Well, but see now though, you don't really need those books anymore because you have the internet.
Yeah.
The internet is essentially Spark Notes now. I actually read a comment the other day. Someone was like, "I know Wikipedia is your Spark Notes or your Cliff Notes or whatever, but someone's presenting real facts to you, and I don't know, it was some dumb argument."
You know what's funny?
about
Related to that,
TV show being canceled.
one of my guilty pleasures, and which is weird, is pleasure. That's a bad word for it, but one of the things that I've done when I'm watching a movie or something is I'll be reading the Cliff Notes or version, the synopsis, the summary on Wikipedia as I'm watching the movie.
Interesting.
I don't really know why
Well, I sometimes will start to read like I'll look up a movie and I'll sometimes read the synopsis like on the Wikipedia page, and I get kind of spoiled, but
and that's.
But maybe I'll forget and I'll watch the movie and it'll be fresh again.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I hope sometimes too.
But I always find it interesting to read the synopsis. It's like, because that's almost like reading like a little short story or a book, and it's like, I kind of want to know more.
Maybe it's an innate desire, and I'm going out on an existential limb here.
Curiosity?
It's curiosity, but maybe there's an innate desire. Maybe this is what Sigmund Freud would say. There's an innate desire to want to read and be part of a story versus to visually tell it. I don't know, but it depends. Maybe there's something else at play there that's beyond.
They can both be engrossing in different ways.
Yeah,
but
and maybe part of it is because I know some people who just can't read, and I think, and they've actually shared with me that the reason that they can't read is not because they can't read, but because they just don't have the imagination to create the visuals in their head of what the storyteller is trying to say. Now, this is their words. This is not me saying that they're not creative.
I can see that.
But
sometimes I think that can be. I think I've experienced that sometimes. It depends.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I'll be reading something and it feels like I'm just reading it. I'm not really visualizing it.
Right.
I think that's a testament to like if you're if it's actually interesting to you or not. Like maybe it hasn't hooked you like you thought it would, so you're kind of like trying to get it over with or something. I don't know.
True. Yeah. So I mean, the reason why we put this together is we wanted to hear from everyone else as well as what you think. Where do you get your news media? Do you still read? What do you see the future of written word being? Will the internet take over completely? And again,
it's possible.
We're not
complete, like 95%,
and we're not
99%.
Avoiding getting too political and saying
99.9%,
repeating, of course, percent sure that. I guess where it's going, but. How will net neutrality change it? Again, not getting too political here, just posing a question to have a conversation
will it
with
change
people.
It?
Question mark. Yeah. Ponders, gazes into space. But
the thinking emoji.
So let's hear from you.
Oh yeah, also that texting too. Like technically, yeah, we didn't even talk about that. I mean, that's a whole thing. Texting and chat things, like those are still popular. But then you get like. You get people doing the emojis, just the pictures. I mean, I do it all the time. I just put a little emoji,
Like, Adam, when are we meeting up? And then you just send a fucking emoji.
No, I usually...
No, you give me...
But if, like, someone says something, I try to, like... if I don't really have anything to say, I'll just put, like, the emoji of, like, something relevant to what someone said.
A new line of conversating. But...
Yeah.
And that's something, I'm glad you bring that up, too, because that is something that... There's an article I read called Saving the Lost Art of the Conversation, which talked about
people don't even talk on the phone anymore.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly. And we'll save that for a discussion on another podcast if that's something that we want. We're going to do it. We're not even going to. But yeah, we're going to do that as a future episode because it sounds like a great thing to talk about. And there's a lot to be said about
I hope we can talk about that.
So give us your feedback as far as what you think the future of written word and media is and how the internet will or will not change that. If you have suggestions about something you want to hear us talk about or you want to get a conversation going forward, email us at atalkpodcast@gmail.com and we'll be happy to take a look. Adam and I, a lot of times, one of the things we really enjoy about this is that we tend to just kind of talk off the cuff. It may make us sound stupid, but best part about it is unfiltered stream of consciousness thinking rather than putting in all this research that is interesting and provides useful input, but we like to do it off the cuff to make it fun and entertaining. So
we research a little bit.
Depending on
it depends on what it is.
And related to that, we have a first impression series that we'll be doing ongoing. If there's a movie that you feel like we should see that you want to hear our first impressions on, let us know at atalkpodcast@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, thanks for tuning in.
See ya.